What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the Berry Blessed podcast. My name is Derek,
My name is Kayla,
and
and
we
we
are
are
the
the Berries.
Berries. Today, we are going to be talking about emotions and specifically how we manage emotions. So, when I say managing emotions, what comes to mind?
Well, for me, as previous experience, I would say in the last 5 years, emotions for me were a trigger in a way. I used to be a big hothead years back. So, and there was certain people in my life that would trigger my hot-headedness. Like I would kind of either get triggered off how they said something or the way they said something, or I would be triggered off their emotion. So if they're upset, bothered, angry, yelling, cursing, all that stuff, I would feed into that energy and it would feed into me. So I had actually a few even close family members that just basically it was like a ripple effect, a reaction. Like they're mad, they're angry, so I'm going to get mad and get angry. Um, and I would say over the last year and a half, I really have worked on that emotion. Doesn't mean I have to be angry or have to react a certain way or react how I know they want me to react. I wouldn't process what was said to me. I would just react, just whatever emotion. Most of the time was anger. Um, that was like my top, or just pettiness, not so much fear, but just anger and just like, how are you going to say that to me? And, or this is happening, so I'm angry about it. How about you?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same over the last year and a half to 2 years. Ever since I've stopped drinking, I'm able to better manage emotions. I've told people this before. I never drank because of trauma or because I had some type of feelings that I was trying to push down. Really, the only time that I drank because of that was when mom passed. It was worse, when she passed. But even prior to that, I drank because I liked to experience intense feelings. So for me, my emotions would heighten based off of how I was feeling and based off of how intoxicated that I was. So if I was really sad, I would drink and I would become depressed. If I was really mad, I would drink and I would become really angry to the point of rage. So if I was happy, and I would drink to the point where I was just, jubilous,
Yeah.
but
So basically, kind of high off of emotions.
exactly. But that made it extremely hard to regulate and control them. If I was really happy and I was intoxicated and then someone did something to make me upset, well then 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah.
I would really change that emotion over to anger quickly, and I would go way past anger and go right into rage.
Yeah.
There's a really awesome Bible verse that's out there that talks about controlling emotions, and it says that we should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. So I think with that, it just kind of proves to us that we have to be able to regulate our emotions. So instead of reacting to something so quickly, instead we should listen, process everything, and then speak afterwards. And even after we speak, be slow to anger, because anger leads to rage.
Right. Yeah. That's true because I mean, in my in the last 2 years, I really kind of looked at my reactions too, but it also kind of looking into emotions is just grounding yourself as well, kind of, going back like, okay, why does this trigger me so much? Why does this person trigger me? Am I influenced by somebody else? Am I just trying to please somebody or multiple people because they're running in this crowd and this is how they act, so I want to act the same way? Or if I'm influenced because I'm drinking, or, out partying with, X, Y, and Z, just kind of like having to reground myself of, okay, I need to stop, think, process what just happened, and not reacting to the first emotion because another person reacted in a negative way because you reacted in a good way to a certain emotion. That was another thing that I personally had to go through because there was an instance of somebody really close to me and they got angry. They were expecting me to get angry, but I didn't get angry. I was calm and collective, and they came at me like, "Why aren't you angry? Why are you acting so sweet?" I'm just like, why get angry of something as simple as this little thing and get so worked up, get your blood pressure up? For what reason? So, with me changing that emotion and just not going straight to anger or negativity, just redirecting my mind. I mean, it's still a process, it's always a process. It's always kind of a battle, but I've definitely am proud of myself that I've really worked on it in the last 2 years. I've seen an improvement because usually if a scenario happens and something triggered me, that was it. There was no calming me down.
Emotional intelligence is something that we can probably save for a different time.
Yeah.
I think more so knowing yourself, self awareness. That's what I was trying to get at. There's an element of self awareness that's in emotional intelligence as well, but again, that's down a different rabbit hole. But having self awareness is the biggest key in kind of regulating emotions because you have to know your triggers. You have to know, hey, in the past, why do I get so angry?
Right.
Kind of getting to the root of that problem. Why do I get so angry? Why do I get so sad? Why do I get so depressed or whatever the emotion might be? Or why do I get so happy? Right. So it's not always all about negative emotions. Sometimes it's about the positive ones too. What can I do that makes me happy, that does not make other people upset? And what does not, what is that thing that makes me feel good? Takes me to my happy place that is not going to disrupt someone else's happiness and somebody else's peace. If you can find what that is, then yeah, continue those behaviors. However, if you're in a situation where you find, hey, I'm always getting mad or I'm always getting dejected or depressed or sad in these types of situations, find out what the trigger is. And when you find the trigger, then hey, now I can just stop, think about it. And when I'm about to feel that emotion, then I can put that emotion to the side and go about it in a different way. Now, this is hard. This is extremely hard to do because we have these things called default behaviors too. Yeah. Default behaviors are something that we've practiced our entire lives, and it's just what happens when somebody says something to us or does something to us. But what we have to do to become more self-aware is once again find those triggers. Once you find the trigger, and you stop and you really think about it, which most people don't. They don't just stop and think, they just do. When you stop and think about it, you have some control over your emotions. You don't have complete control over your emotions. You're going to get sad. You're going to get mad. You're going to get upset. These are all things that we're humans. We're all going to feel these things, but it's about having the self control and the self awareness to be able to react in uh, a more positive way.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like emotional maturity, though, too, because if you know what your triggers are and how to basically control your emotions, I feel like that's emotional maturity. You know how to properly react to something without getting yourself turning far left or far right or making somebody else upset. And like kind of going to what you were saying, like I feel like more emotions causes reaction when you're angry than more happy, because usually you get more, you people have more emotions to bad things in like depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, they're more happy. Don't you? I That's how
We're
I feel.
we're triggered by negative events.
Yeah,
So trauma, right, is there are negative events that have happened in our past. We're more so triggered by those than those events that have happened in our past that are happy.
yeah,
Even though the studies have shown we have more events on a daily basis where we're either happy or content
yeah,
than we are upset.
yeah,
But the upsetting things tend to stick into our mind more and become
yeah,
traumatic. So that does create more emotion.
yeah. They say 90% daily you feel joy, happiness, and anxiety are the three top emotions, and like your daily life is like 90% that. But also too, like I feel like sometimes in certain scenarios, not all the time, but sometimes when you feel joy, somebody else might be triggered off your joy. They see you happy when they're not happy. And also kind of just reflecting to that, 5 years ago, somebody comes me incorrect about my happiness, I'm just going to go full left. And it's like, also like you can be in your happiest time and somebody's not happy for you, you can react just on their emotion, and as a mature person you'd be like, oh, okay, well, just move on and not really like get into it. So I feel like it's more, yeah, like negative trauma that gets people fired up. Some people will be triggered because of like their car that they have. Oh, you got a new car, another one. And somebody could take that as, why are you coming at me? Because I got a new car. I'm financially stable or whatever. Some people can get triggered over little stuff too.
Well, envy is an emotion.
Yeah.
So, people are envious of others. Also, emotions are extremely contagious.
Yeah.
If you put a group of people into a controlled room, so let's say you have three people that you have into a room, and one person is really, really upset. One person's really mad, and the other two are just kind of mono. If that person continues to be mad and upset for an extended period of time, it's going to spread to the other two. There's going to be those other two then get upset, and it can just be something as simple as them asking, well, why are you so upset? And that makes them upset because they're having to then address the other person. So emotions are contagious, but they were never designed to be, and they were never meant to be. We're all individual people who have our own emotions that can regulate them any way that we choose to. We just choose to be influenced by others. And influence is another thing that is just so huge in the world. So we tend to mimic others' behaviors. We tend to essentially just be carbon copies of our mentors. So, people that have brought us up in the past, whether it's our parents or people that we look up to, however they behave and however they act, we tend to mimic their actions. But as you were saying, with the emotional, maturity, as you age and as you grow, you start to learn yourself. And then when you learn yourself, you can then make the decision, hey, who do I actually want to mimic? And as Christians, we're called to be Christ-like, which is what Christianity even means, is to be Christ-like. And Christ himself got angry. There were times where he was angry. You can recall the time in the Bible where he found that the temple was essentially a marketplace, and he went in and he was very, very upset and even turned over tables there. We all have to go through emotions. But what we decide to get emotional about is where it's key. So, are we upset for no reason? A lot of times, yes. And then are we happy? Are we content with things that we have, that we can afford, and not being so comparative to others? No, usually we're not. Normally we're very comparative to others, and we have envy. But again, what we should be looking at, and what you and I both have worked really hard on over the last couple of years, is trying to find that joy on a daily basis. Try to be slow to be angry, to try to not have arguments, to have disagreements. Sure, if you disagree about something, you can do it in a way where you allow one person to communicate, and then you can absorb everything that was said, and then you yourself then can communicate. It doesn't always have to be a shouting match. So that's again, that's where again, what you were talking about with that emotional maturity is, that's where that comes into play.
Yeah, so like a healthy disagreement, I like to say, because I mean, at the end of the day, we all have our own opinions on everything. Doesn't matter. And everybody has their right to their own opinions. We're only ourselves. We weren't grown up the same way. Me and my own husband did not grow up the same way. Two separately different households and two separate different states. So, it's just everybody has the right to their own opinion, but it's just how you address it too. As if you're addressing it to somebody else and being open to their opinion, or also receiving their opinion, you may not like their opinion, which is okay. 9 times out of 10, you don't have the same opinion. Me and my own husband don't have the same opinion on quite a few things. But it's not like I'm going to get angry at the end of the day. But also, boiling down, it's that emotional, maturity at the end of the day, and having that. And that's kind of boiling down to also having that emotional maturity about judging other people. Christians are not supposed to judge. You know, somebody might have done X, Y, and Z to somebody else. Either if it was somebody stole something, somebody was unfaithful, you name it, anything. Yes, that's bad. That's wrong. You're not supposed to do any of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to still love one another, love each other. You're saying you don't love them, you're not going to pray for them, you don't wish them well. We're supposed to be Christian. We might not agree to what they did, which all of us are sinners. We've sinned multiple times in our life, of course. And it's just crazy how in the last year and a half, I've really kind of digest emotional maturity and kind of picking it apart for myself. And now I see it in other people. And it's like, this is not right. You're taking your emotions and letting them drive you, and taking your mind far left when you're supposed to be straightforward on your journey with God to being more Christian like. You know, Jesus walked with people that were sinners. All the 12 disciples that he walked with were sinners. They did what they did, but he didn't let the past that they did, all the corruption, all their sin, I'm still going to walk right next to them. I'm going to break bread with them. I'm going to fellowship with them. And he didn't let that emotion triggered. And it's like boiling me down to really, I have been really deep diving into emotional maturity, because looking at it, and I can only say for myself, like I've done it before. I let my emotions trigger myself to where I'm judging somebody because of what they did. But it's like, okay, you're judging, but are you going to judge yourself for what all you did in your life? Like sometimes, like looking at their scenario, it could be something close to yours that you did in your past. So who are we to judge on somebody else that did? Yes, whatever they did is wrong. Yes, a sin is a sin, but at the end of the day, they're still on their journey. And if they repented and asked God for forgiveness, we can't judge. The only person that can judge at the end of the day, when we go home to the Lord, that he's the one that makes that decision.
Yeah, Jesus said to all of the Pharisees and Sadducees that were ready to stone a woman that was unfaithful to her husband, he said, though those without sin cast the first stone. And none of them could cast a stone. They all dropped their stones. So that is an example of, we all do wrong. You know, I've oftentimes said this, especially to the group that I speak to. There's only one difference between like a criminal and myself, even someone as bad as bad as, I put that in quotations, as a murderer and myself, and that's the act. That's the action itself. That person decided to do that But the only thing that separates me and that person is the actual act itself. I'm just as capable as that person is of committing crime. I'm just as capable as another person is of committing sin. We're all human, which means we're imperfect. So to say that you're better than somebody or that I'm better than somebody is completely and totally false. We're all humans. We're all capable of doing acts. The difference is, as humans, we have a very high degree of intelligence. So we can make the decision. We can decide whether we're going to do something or not. But oftentimes, most of these crimes that are committed, they're done off of emotion. They're not thought through. They're done at a rate that's just on a whim. That people are just like, oh well, I can't eat tonight, so I'm gonna go steal, instead of maybe having a conversation with somebody, asking somebody for help. But pride gets in the way, and a lot of times when we have people that are extremely prideful, and we have people that are arrogant, those traits are all from emotion. And unless we have our emotions in check, we're going to have negative traits. So anytime that anything is out of control, when you don't have control over something that you have at least limited control over, things are going to go off the rails.
Right. Yeah.
You lose control of a vehicle, you're going to crash eventually.
Mm.
Your emotions are the same way. When you lose control of your emotions and you do not regulate them as they should, you're going to go off the rails.
Yeah. No, 100%. And at the end of the day, sin is sin. Yes, we as humans, we'll put certain sin in different categories because, like, oh, this is the worst sin. And this one's like, oh, this is just like a little baby sin. It doesn't really matter. Sin is sin at the end of the day. And a lot of that is a lot of sin is based off emotions. At the end of the day, watching your tongue and how you say something as well can also trigger somebody else's emotion as well.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there. Next time that we get together, hopefully it will be a lot sooner than what it has been. We apologize for the gap in content. We've been doing a lot of traveling, as well as, I think what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago when we had recorded, we had found that the recording kind of had stopped, or it actually didn't pick up the audio. So we have all of the kinks fixed. We now have an editing computer now here at Kayla's here in Wisconsin. We have one in my place in Arizona as well. So more content to come. But until then, my name's Derek.
My name is Kayla,
And we are the Berries.
Bye, guys.
Take care.